What's up, everybody? In the garage again. It's been a minute since I made a video. Still obviously on the phone, so lighting's gonna suck, but it is what it is. You're doing this DIY YouTube stuff. So a couple things I want to cover in this video. Got a KLX 110. This is a 2021. Had it for a little while and decided to do some additional modifications to it. I should have filmed a video when I first got this thing of what I've done, but I'll run over a couple things real quick and then show you what I'm into currently. So she's got a set of Pro Tapers, big bar kit. Comes with an extended throttle cable as well as an extended clutch cable for the 110Ls. Top triple clamp, all the mounting hardware, and then of course the taller bars. Pretty simple to install. Nothing too crazy. The only thing that's a little bit different is how the switch mounts up for your electric start. The stock bars have a little pin hole cut out so that this clamps together nicely. So you kind of have to do some shaving inside of here to get this guy to kind of sit securely, but otherwise not too bad. And then normally your switch mounts right there, but with the taller bars, that guy does not reach. So I just had to unclip it, and I just haven't zip tied it there yet, but I probably should at some point. Yeah, pretty simple to install. I know some people will disengage the clutch switch, not your plug for the starter. This is for the clutch. Some people will just ground that out so that the bike will still start or attempt to start. It's designed so that it doesn't start in gear and accidentally take off on somebody. But yeah, as you saw, I got a Pro Circuit pipe on it, Pro Circuit side cover. I've got a PAX Racing chain guide, chain case saver. Though it's not really a saver. There's a big plastic one that goes over here stock. But as you can see, that really wouldn't do a whole lot as far as saving the case if this chain snapped. Not that she's pushing any crazy high horsepower, but just a little trick part there. I've got Two Brothers foot pegs with the additional brace. These are known for adult riders to strip out the bottom of the bolts under the case, because that's where this foot peg bar mounts to. And I've seen it happen a couple of times. The good news is new. It comes with a 6-month warranty from Kawasaki. And having worked for a dealership, a Kawasaki dealership for a while, in both service and parts, I've seen Kawasaki cover that under warranty before, which is pretty cool. Kawasaki's all about just educating the customer and typically cover a lot of things that other manufacturers would not cover, which is pretty cool. That also includes fork seals on this guy. For 6 months they're covered, and you can even get extended warranty through Kawasaki. Their Kawasaki Protection Plus, KPPO, will still cover fork seals and then anything internal on the motor, which is pretty awesome. So, and probably some suspension upgrades at some point, because my front's pretty much just blown out. I mean, it's not leaking, but the front springs are pretty dang soft. The rear's not too bad stock, but I would like to get something that's adjustable. Thought about doing a swing arm, but I don't know. It's a lot of extra money into just something I just mob around on. Also went with the Two Brothers Racing extended foot brake as well. Matches up pretty nice. One thing to note, when you do upgrade, if you end up going with the Two Brothers foot peg kit, it does eliminate your kickstand. So as you can see, I don't have a kickstand on this guy, so it either just stays leaned up against something or it stays on my little jack stand here. So, but the reason for this video is because I'm installing a BBR U-Flow air filter. It's pretty simple enough. However, you run into a couple of issues when installing. It's got instructions, but they're pretty vague. The only tip that they give you in the instructions is once you've got the plastics and everything off, this brace, which is for your clutch, it's just a little bracket to keep it from getting damaged, has an extra piece that comes off. And so they tell you, in order to install this so that you can get your boot onto the carburetor, you've got to cut this off. No problems there. Just removed everything, took a hacksaw to it, and then got a file and ground everything down so it's not super sharp. The other issue, though, they give you 2 small hose clamps. Here's your stock one. They give you a much smaller one. They give you 2 because you're supposed to put one on the boot that goes from the carburetor to the actual U-Flow air box. The problem is your choke, this guy right here, has this spring and this little piece of plastic here. And that plastic's, I think, just designed so that it gives it a smooth surface to ride up against as it's moving back and forth when you use it. But you can't get a hose clamp in there. I just watched another YouTube video where a guy was showing the installation, didn't even bring that up. And if you can see, this boot needs to fit right up against the seal edge of the carburetor. But you can't get a clamp in there. The clamp is not small enough. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I could put a zip tie there, I guess. Kind of crank down on that a little bit, but nobody talks about that in any of the install videos when you go to put this thing on. You cannot get a hose clamp on there. And if you pull this back, then you're gonna rub against the fender, which is also super annoying. Something BBR doesn't talk about. So I don't know what the fix is for that. I might reach out to BBR and be like, hey, you guys need to improve this. These KLXs haven't really changed at all for the last 4 or 5 years. So what the heck do you expect us to do with that? Can't put a hose clamp there. The only saving grace is the bracket that they give you will hold this thing in place. So I'm not worried about it popping off, but you know, there's not like a tight seal around this. I mean, this is pretty tight. It goes over the carburetor, which is good, but you know, as that gets hot, wears out, or whatever, there's a potential for dirt and debris to get inside of it. And that's going to go straight through the carburetor and the motor, and that's what we don't want. So just something, I don't know if anybody else has run into this, but that's an issue currently while trying to install this on the bike. I also don't like that it rubs on the fender. I wanted to go through the extra work. I could cut the fender, I guess. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of extra work to do this modification on here. And there's a pretty big company, especially in the big bike world. I don't know why they didn't address that or have some other fix for this. But another thing that you have to do, which is quite your choke plunger bracket and your ignition coil normally sit. Ignition coil sits up there, and then that hole and that hole are for your 2 little rods here to hold your choke plunger in place. You have to move those back. BBR doesn't talk about that in the instructions. So you're only going to have 1 bolt in this hard shaft on this bracket for your choke plunger. But it's secure. Make sure you attach your ground wire there. But that guy's just going to dangle loose, and then you're going to have to relocate your ignition. Kind of annoying. The fact that the instructions don't talk about that is kind of annoying, especially when this is a pretty sought-after modification. They do give you some jetting specs in the instructions, which is pretty cool. I've got an 82 main jet in here currently, and I did that for the pipe. I don't know if it was really needed. It used to backfire and pop quite a bit, but it cut that out pretty much right away when I swapped it out. They recommend doing like 100 to start if you're running a stock exhaust and adding this air box. So I'm gonna have to go through, when I get to work on Tuesday, go through my jets and see if I've got one that big. I might even go to like a 110 or a 115, I think they recommend, if you've got like one of their exhausts on it or something. But just some little struggles, some kind of annoyances when installing this thing. I don't know, maybe somebody else out there has done this same mod and ran into the same issues, but like I said, the first video when I just clicked on BBR, U-Flow, air filter, KLX in YouTube, there was a video of a guy doing it, and he was like, oh yeah, and you got to move these parts back. I'm like, come on, BBR, do better. Help explain it or make it not so freaking complicated and redesign this thing so that it actually fits properly. Kind of annoying. But while I'm wrapping this guy up, I think I had pretty much everything tightened down. I'm just going to be putting on the plastics. Another topic I wanted to bring up and talk about. Doesn't get talked about a lot. I'm sure there's videos on here about it, but I get asked this question all the time. The reason this is coming up is because I had a motorcycle hitch carrier. I'm going to set this down while I finish buttoning this guy up. And sold it to a guy on OfferUp. Super cool guy. He's got a TTR 125. It's a beginner bike for him. He's got a wife and a couple kids. So he's like, I didn't want to go crazy. I got it used. He's like, but I wanted something small that I could just go out and just ride and have a good time with. So I'm like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, I don't even really know where to ride. I just got the bike. So I shared with him some information of a couple of different places that I knew. And then we started talking about modifications to the bike. I showed him the KLX 250 that I got in the 110, and he got all excited about it. And I was like, yeah, dude, you got to start somewhere, but get out and just go ride the bike. Find a place that, works for you, where you can just get out and have a good time, and you're not worried about being out at a track with people that are super, super good and you feel intimidated and everything else. But I just gave him a bunch of information, and he was super, super grateful. I even gave him my phone number, because he's like 10 minutes from where I live. And I was like, dude, yeah, anytime you want to go, just ride, just to get in some seat time for a couple of hours. There's a place right here, 10 minutes from the house, that we can go hit up, and we can go ride around. And he was super grateful, and was like, oh man, we need more people like you. I think I spent like an hour after he'd given me the cash for it. His wife's in the car, in the truck, just running. We probably spent a good 45 minutes to an hour just chit-chatting and just me sharing my information, what I knew, having been in the industry and stuff like that. And he took that to heart and was super, super grateful for it, and said, we need more people like that, which I 100% agree. I think there's a lot of great people in the moto community. I think most everybody's pretty genuine and wants to share the information that we have, and every now and again you'll get some little stickler that just thinks he's the best at everything and doesn't care to share any information with anybody, and thinks that you're dumb if you don't know what he knows. But I don't think that's the majority of it. But then he started asking me, okay, well, if I decide to get a bigger bike, should I get something new? Should I get something used? And so I'll try to keep this pretty short, but I thought I would just kind of make a quick video since I got the bike torn apart. For a lot of people out there that are questioning a used bike versus a new bike, obviously, right off the rip, new bike, you're not going to run into any issues, typically. And if you do, again, and it happens to be a Kawasaki, even though the KX model dirt bikes don't come with a warranty, all KLX models do, which is cool. Typically, Kawasaki, if you run into any issues within the first couple of hours of owning the bike and running it, got interrupted there by my daughter. Just rolled up. Anyways, so new bike, typically you're not going to have any problems. You prep them at the dealerships, yada, yada, yada. You put some gas in it, you break it in, you do an oil change, and you go and ride the thing, and it's awesome. Used bikes, on the other hand, are a lot more complicated. You never really know how many owners it's had. You never really know the amount of time the bike's got on it, hours-wise, unless they've got an hour meter attached to it. And though a lot of people say they've done maintenance and they've done X, Y, and Z, that's not always the case. So it's turning out to be a great day to film, I guess. So anyways, I'll cut to the chase. I wanted to just kind of run through a couple of things that you should look out for when purchasing a used dirt bike. Really any motorcycle, for that fact. First and foremost is try to figure out how much time they've got on the bike, and the overall condition. If it looks pretty clean, plastics aren't super warped, scratched up, faded, 9 times out of 10 it was somebody that washed the bike regularly. They may have ridden it wet, but they didn't put it away wet, which is really nice. Check for strip bolts, kind of just cosmetic stuff. Will tell you a lot about how well the bike was taken care of. Next, check the overall condition. A few things you can spot off right off the bat. Chain and sprockets. Not a good example, but this is an example of a slightly dirty chain. But really you just want to look for rust. You want to listen audibly for any kind of additional roller play. Feel the chain physically. If it feels pretty rough, pretty stiff, these links don't move around nice and freely, but sometimes tend to get stuck in certain places. there's a good chance that she's going to be in need of a new chain. While you're there, you can check out the sprockets. Look at the condition. If they look excessively worn down in the groove where the rollers actually sit, or if these are starting to get super pointy and actually starting to wave over, that's another good sign that it's going to be due for chain and sprockets. And in my experience, depending upon the brands and sizes that you go with, you know, most chains are anywhere between 60, 70, all the way upwards of 150 bucks, depending on the type, whether it's a standard chain, an O-ring chain, whether it's gold-plated, black-plated, lots of different options out there. And then front and rear sprockets are gonna typically run you about 80 bucks, 90 bucks, again, depending on the brand and style. So right there, you're a couple $100. If you're able to do it yourself in the garage, awesome. If you take it to a dealership, they're gonna charge you, you know, anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half. And depending on your shop rate, that adds up pretty quickly just for chain and sprockets. So something to keep an eye out on. Next thing, obviously start the bike, run it. See how it sounds. Check for leaks. Listen to the bike. Does it sound good? Does it sound rough? How many kicks did it take you? If it's got electric start, how's the battery? Did it fire up right away? Hopefully the guy didn't run it just before you showed up, so you want to check and make sure the engine's not super hot. Otherwise, you probably want to start asking some questions. Fork seals is another big one. Check for leakage. Good indicator. It's hard to see on the right side up forks, but on an upside down fork, just look at the front master cylinder and look at the bottom of the fork tubes and the actual lower fork leg itself. It's got a bunch of debris built up on it. It looks like it's collecting a bunch of dirt and muck. There's a good chance his fork seals were leaking at one point or are actively leaking, or there's no more fluid in the forks, and so you're not going to notice any visible leaks. But just test riding the bike or just sitting on it and compressing the front forks should tell you a whole lot. If it feels really, really springy, doesn't feel like there's a lot of damping inside of the fork, and it just feels real soft, unless he's got suspension upgrades, more than likely he's had a fork seal leak and there's no fluid inside. But just look down here by the wheel, check the fork tube itself, just look for any debris buildup and those types of things. It'll run you, again, depending on the kit that you get, if you're going stock OEM or aftermarket, all balls or something like that, you're going to be anywhere between $300, $400, $500 potentially. If you're going to do it yourself, save yourself on the labor, awesome. But I know the shop that I work at, if you bring in loose forks, it's 2 hours to do it. If you bring it on the bike, we charge you an extra half an hour to remove the front end and the forks off of the bike. And I think our shop rate's like 152, 162, somewhere right in there. So you can do the math. Those are a couple things. Tires are another one. Check the condition of the tires if they look abnormally worn, and most people will say that. Bike runs great, super good condition, just is going to need tires. Okay, well, depending on the tires you get, those are going to run you 50 to 110 bucks for a rear, and 40 to 80 bucks for a front tire, depending on the brand and the style that you go with. So some other things to consider when looking at a used bike. Overall condition of it, visibly, just the aesthetics, again, can tell you a whole lot as to how that bike was taken care of. But those are just a few things to check. Obviously, it's hard to check things like wheel bearings, steering head bearings, whether stuff was maintained and greased, the linkage, those types of things. That stuff you'll probably have to dig into if you end up buying the bike, checking the condition. Anytime you're removing the axles anyways, it's good to re-grease, clean up the seals, the bushings, and the spacers that are there. You always want to re-grease that stuff periodically, at least once a year. I take apart my shock linkage and I re-grease all of those needle bearings, and anything else that I can get access to that's going to require some grease. Typically that's a once a year maintenance item for me. But overall, just don't be scared. Ask questions. Go in there acting like you're not going to buy the bike. Try to do some research ahead of time and get as much information from the person as you can before you make your drive out to go check the thing out with your cash in hand. But I figured I'd just kind of walk you through a few things of what to look out for and spot to make sure you're getting a good deal. And if the bike looks fairly clean but is in need of some of those maintenance items, that gives you some haggle room to be able to negotiate on the price, especially if you can call ahead to a dealership and say, hey, what do you guys charge to do X, Y, and Z service? You can take that money and say, hey man, look, bike's going to need chain and sprockets, bike's going to need fork seals, it's going to need X, Y, or Z. I already talked to a local dealership, here's about how much they're going to charge me, and see if they'll work with you on price. Talk about strip bolts. Ask them, cool, when's the last time you did an oil change? Do they replace the crush washer on the drain plug every time? There are a lot of people that don't, believe it or not. And then it starts to drip out of the bottom of the case, and so what do? They think, oh, I didn't tighten my drain plug enough. So then they put a wrench on it, and they give it a couple more cranks. And next thing you know, you got a stripped out drain bolt. They're trying to do a helicoil in it. They're trying to put some epoxy around it or something to prevent it from leaking. You have no idea because it's underneath the bike and you didn't think to check it. You take it into a dealership or you take it to your house to go do an oil change on it. Lo and behold, you found you have a stripped drain bolt. That's a pain in the butt because, again, the only way to fix that is some type of a Zerk fitting, helicoil, or you're replacing the cases. The thing on the Cowies is they've got like 2 separate chambers for where the oil actually sits on the crankcase. So doing a helicoil usually doesn't fix that problem. You'll still get some leakage, and that's because the helicoil goes up into the case and it still allows for some oil to get past that. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Just out here on a Sunday and thought I would make another video. This thing's already going way too long than I expected, but had a couple of interruptions. But anyways, there it is. Thinking about doing some additional modifications to the KLX 110RL. Not sure what I'm going to do. I do need some new grips for it at some point. I might just run it as is, maybe drop some heavier springs in the front forks at some point, just to give me a little bit more feel in the front end so that it doesn't feel all squishy. I tend to bottom this thing out quite a bit when I take it out. And then I got some other plans for the KX as well. I've got a Moab trip coming up in the first week of October, so I got to get that thing prepped and ready for Moab. Probably going to be doing some hand guards, got to get a skid plate, front disc guard, a couple other protection items on there in preparation for that. So I'll be making some more videos as those parts arrive, how to install, some small little tricks and tips, and just take you guys along for the fun. So appreciate the views. Comment if you've got anything additional to add to the video. If you like the video, let me know. Anything that you want to see. Being a parts manager at a Kawasaki dealership, I have a lot of connections with people and parts, which is awesome. So if there's something specific you've got questions about, hit me up, reach out to me, let me know. If there's something specific you want to see in a video as far as install goes and whatnot, you get enough comments and likes on it, definitely do a video on it for you guys. But either way, appreciate the follow, appreciate you sticking around this long. We're out.